Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Homestead Miami Speedway. It's a fun track. You can run the bottom, middle, high groove, anywhere around this track. Particularly the high groove because it's the faster way around the racetrack, especially in the corners up there. But it's such a fun, entertaining race that puts on a lot of excitement, a lot of thrilling battles at the end of the race between who's going to come across the start-finish line in one piece and not scrape the wall, who manages their tires. It was such an entertaining race yesterday. We had some playoff drivers deal with adversity, and a few of them were able to come out with some solid runs, but none greater than the man that won yesterday after coming up just short last weekend. Let's get into all that went down in Miami. Number 1, Christopher Bell. Ding, 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 ding. Punches his ticket to the Championship 4, winning yesterday's Forever 400 at Homestead Miami Speedway, beating out Ryan Blaney, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, and AJ Allmendinger for the victory. What a win for the 20 team and Christopher Bell after coming just short last week, and despite a valiant effort and drive at the end of that race to try to catch Kyle Larson for the victory, just fell a little bit short and literally had to reflect on what could have you done differently to try to get by the 5 car. How would he even negotiate lap traffic versus what the 5 car was doing? But this weekend, he was able to make the most of it. Now, starting off with the race yesterday for Bell, at the beginning, they were not that good. And quite frankly, they looked like they were about to be pretty bad. I mean, they were 20th at one point. I said I would not have given you a plug nickel that they would have been able to overcome that 20th place run that they had earlier in the race, particularly I think it's stage 2 it was, and drive all the way up to the front at the very end and win the race. It was just incredible what the 20 team did. They kept working on the car, and made the right adjustments as the race continued to progress on. The track cooled down. I think it played their way because for a race that was pretty much run in the partly cloudy weather yesterday, it seemed to work in their favor late when the track began to cool down as the sun went down, and Bell's car began to come alive. And the final restart of the race, he was battling hard with the 2 other Bs that have a last name that begins with a B like him, Blaney and Byron. They were in a battle a lot in that final stint of the race yesterday, and Bell was able to take the lead from those 2 and was able to start pulling away and literally had to tell his spotter, leave me alone on the radio, kind of like pull a Kimi Räikkönen basically, to say, was getting information about the other cars that were trying to run the high groove to try to catch up to him. He passed Byron for the lead late and was pretty much getting information fed briefly before the spotter said, I'll leave you alone, about where the 12 car, Blaney, and the 45 of Reddick, who were trying to close the gap late, where lane they were running. Bell was running the middle groove of the racetrack in the last end of the race, while the guys trying to catch him were running up towards the wall because that's the faster way around, and they felt like they could get a lot of good exit speed off the corners to try to run down the leader. Blaney was trying everything he could, but Bell obviously just did everything right, the right lanes in the corners, and just had good runoff speed off the corners to continue to extend his lead over them. And now he's punched his ticket to the Championship 4, a big win for him and the 20 team. Remember, they made the Championship 4 last year when they won in Martinsville. Now that their spot's locked up, they can go into next weekend with no stress whatsoever, and they can begin to focus on their Phoenix car, because next week's a short track in Phoenix. Even though it's a mild track, it may not be classified as a short track. It sometimes is. They can go to Martinsville next weekend and work on what they can expect to bring to the table in just about 2 weeks when we get ready to go to Phoenix to decide who's going to win the championship. But a big win for Christopher Bell and the 20 team. Congrats to them on an impressive win at Homestead yesterday. Number 2, Blaney, runner-up. What a week in race it has been for Ryan Blaney these last couple of days. Starting off from last week, where he originally finished 6th in the race, and then NASCAR disqualified him because a part of his car did not meet the modifications in the rule book for NASCAR. He was then for disqualified, but then NASCAR corrected that and said they actually followed the rule book. It was our fault, and they rescinded the penalty and gave Blaney back his spot and his points, allowing him to be 17 below the cutoff line entering yesterday. But yesterday they had a very good race car, a car capable of winning. They had the speed in their car, and they were battling hard in the middle of stage 2 with arguably the best car yesterday in Kyle Larson, and Blaney seemed like everything was shifting his way. He won stage 2. He had the lead in the early stint of the final stage and looked like he was going to have things go his way. And then right behind him, which I'm going to talk about in a second, something happened to him where a guy running him down had a pit road incident and brought out the yellow, and ultimately changed the outcome of the race for the most part, because Blaney, even though he was able to come to pit road and get his tires, I think he was kind of a little bit off on what everybody else was, and I think he needed some longer runs, because that's where his car really excelled yesterday. Well, we had some of those cautions late in the race, just a couple, but it was enough to kind of take away perhaps long 30-40 green flag lap runs and hurt the 12 car. He was battling hard with Byron and the final restart for the lead. Then he fell back and got passed by the 20 of Bell. And then as we got into a little bit of a long stint in that last run, Blaney's car began to come alive. Unfortunately, too little too late because of how far back he was. He was able to get by the 24 Byron after Bell passed him for the lead. And Blaney tried everything he could in those last few laps of the race to try to run down the 20 car to get the victory. Just fell a little bit short, but a valiant effort nonetheless by the 12 team. And because of the run they had yesterday, with the stage win, with the stage points, with the runner-up finish, they are now above the cutoff line by 10 points. That's how many fingers I've got holding up right now. They're 10 points above the cutoff line. Heading into Martinsville, a track where he's been pretty good at in the past. All you need is a solid run and nobody below you in the playoff grid to win next weekend and bump you out. You need to have a solid day, outpoint your opponents, and you will be in the championship 4. It was a great run for the 12 team. They really would have loved to have won that race, even though the spotter kept telling him, think big picture because of the points gap they had. I know think big picture, but there's also a win right in front of you, and you cannot blame Blaney for trying everything he could in that last stint to try to catch the 20 car. He was trying everything he had in his car and running the high groove and trying to get good exit speed. I think in the last 2 laps, I think he pretty much realized, I'm not going to catch him unless if I get a caution, so I'm just going to pretty much hold my ground and settle for second place. It's a great points day. You would have loved to win, but regardless, at the end of the day, the points that you earned have the 12 car above the cutoff line heading into Martinsville next weekend, and all they need is a solid race and nobody below him in points to win next weekend to knock him out. But a great job, nonetheless, by Ryan Blaney and the 12 team yesterday. Number 3, Larson into the barriers. Yikes, that was a rough hit. Off the stress with his win last weekend at Las Vegas, there was no pressure whatsoever for Kyle Larson entering this race yesterday. He came in pretty much thinking, we're in the championship 4, let's just go learn and try to experiment and try to gain some momentum. Well, yesterday, I could say Larson had the best car yesterday. He was so good in stage 1, leading a lot of the laps, won stage 1, and was so good at the beginning of stage 2, even with some battles with guys like Blaney and Brad Keselowski. At the time, he seemed to have the best car, and I think at the end of stage 2, the car began to fade a little bit, or maybe he was saving his equipment and his tires and let the 12 car go by and take the stage. But Larson, I think, was just saving his tires to try to save the run and the momentum he would have for the final stage. And the final stage, he was good off the bat, lost the lead to Ryan Blaney, but was trying to close back in. But on the final round of green flag pit stops in the race yesterday, Blaney was coming down to pit road, and Larson's coming in from behind quite a ways back and came in really, really hot, trying to close the gap and hoping to get down to pit road speed, but he came in way too hot and went right into the water barrels at the entrance of pit road. Barrels that have provided some interesting moments at Homestead if you think back to what Kurt Busch nearly did in 2004 when he lost a right front wheel, came off the car, but thankfully he was able to get into pit road before the car hit right into the barriers, and that would have ultimately eliminated Kurt Busch and prevented him from having that championship. But he overcame that, and he was able to win the championship. Larson, unfortunately, was not so fortunate, and he hit the wall, hit the barriers, and ultimately that damaged the car and took him out of contention for the race win. Again, he won last weekend. He's in the championship 4. There's nothing really to worry about, complain about, but at the same time, you would have loved a little extra momentum after the win that you had last weekend. They had the car to win yesterday's race. It was just unfortunate given the incident that transpired coming down to pit road that hot. I thought he pushed it a little too far regarding slowing it down and just came in way too hot and went wide of those water barrels, and that had to put out the red flag so we could clean it up, and then we got it back going. But that was a pretty rough hit for the 5 team. But again, thankfully, they're in the championship 4. Number 4, Gibbs cars suffer incidents late in the race. While Christopher Bell was celebrating his win in his championship 4 spot locked up, his 2 teammates in the playoffs, Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr., had to watch in the garage. Towards the end of the race, well, starting off with Denny Hamlin, a really good race car early on in the race, hovering around the top 5, top 10. At the beginning of the final stage, when Larson had his incident, it looked like Denny Hamlin was possibly in the catbird seat to race with the 12 and the 24 for the win. It looked like he had the car possibly to get by both of them and lock up his spot. But then late in the race, with about 35 laps to go, while racing hard with the 12 car, Blaney kind of said was a little too much regarding how they were racing each other. Even though they weren't banging off each other, banging quarter panels, they were still racing hard and costing themselves valuable time on the track. the 11 car went down into turn 1 and something broke, and he went right up into the outside wall and took himself out of the race, and now finds himself below the cutoff line entering Martinsville next weekend at 17 points below. A really tough blow for Denny Hamlin, who probably, if he had solidified a top 5 yesterday and didn't have that issue, he would have been above the cutoff line, or he would have been below the cutoff line, but just a few points entering next week at Martinsville, a track where even though he's had success at in his tenure at Martinsville, the last couple of times he's been there have not been that good to him. So there's cause for concern that Denny Hamlin may not win next weekend and make the championship 4. I mean, it's not a must-win at 17 points below for Denny Hamlin, but it's a pretty difficult obstacle to try to overcome given what you could have had yesterday if the right front wheel didn't, whatever part broke in the right front, let go and send him straight into the outside wall in turn 1 really hurts them heading into next weekend. Then his teammate Martin Truex Jr. looked like things were turning around for them. They had a top 10 last week, their first top 10 of these playoffs. Yes, that's how rough it's been for this team, even with the regular season championship and those bonus points with the wins, stage wins, and the 15 extra bonus points for the regular season title locked up. They have struggled in these playoffs, and they just pretty much got through by the skin of their teeth. And last week they put together a great top 10 run, and to start the weekend, they won the pole for this race and looked like, okay, momentum's going their way. They ran top 5, top 10 in the first 2 stages and were getting stage points, which seemed like it was going to help them. But in the final stage, he lost his track position and was just really struggling, and he was not happy over the radio, and it's been the case these entire playoffs. He's not been happy. James Small is trying to encourage him. It's okay, we're going to get a break here, but Truex has just been really frustrated these entire playoffs. And then late in the race, they took a gamble after the caution for Kyle Larson to come in and get 4 tires, and they were thinking that they were going to drive their way all the way back up to the field. But right when Denny Hamlin hit the wall, bringing out the caution, Martin Truex Jr.'s engine gave up, and therefore he had to exit the race at the same time his teammate did. Both finished 29th and 30th, and both are 17 points below the cutoff line. And I hate to say it, Truex fans, but unless you win next weekend, I don't see any way Martin Truex Jr. can point his way into the championship 4 next week. It's just been a struggle for them in these playoffs. I mean, really, ever since we introduced the next-gen car for these playoffs, whoever wins the regular season championship, whether it was like last year was Chase Elliott and this year Martin Truex Jr., they have not had a lot of luck in these playoffs. Yes, Elliott made the championship 4 last year, and of course, it helped with the strong regular season that he had and the win in the playoffs at Talladega. But other than that, they got in just by that much. It was that tight because of how big of a struggle that they had to deal with in those playoffs. Same goes for Truex. Again, 1 top 10 in these playoffs. Unacceptable for a man who won the regular season championship and all those race wins. How can they be struggling this bad after you had a really good regular season? How are you struggling in these playoffs even though you're just barely in there to try to get in the championship 4? I don't understand where the momentum's gone. Where is it? They gotta find it next weekend where it matters most, in a track where Truex has been very good at in the past. They've got to find a way to close the deal next weekend. Same goes for Denny Hamlin. But based on both of their recent histories at Martinsville, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough for both of them to get into the playoffs. I mean, honestly, only right now, based on the points, one of them can have a chance to get in next weekend because William Byron's point cushion, there's no way he's getting eliminated. It's going to be basically between either Truex or Hamlin. If both of them are battling for the win late, one of them's going to be in and the other one's going to be left disappointed. So it's going to be really rough for both of those guys trying to win next weekend in Martinsville. And number 5, the racing action yesterday. Early on in the race, it was relatively tame, spread out for the most part, which you would expect at Homestead with long green flag runs, guys managing their tires. So we had some comers, had some goers, guys lose track position based off of, extending the stints, but maybe not coming to their benefit in those green flag runs. But then the final stage came, I felt like we had a lot more intense action. Of course, the battle for the win late between the 3 Bs, Byron, Bell, and Blaney, was so much fun to watch. Those 3 go at it for a spot in the championship 4 to join Kyle Larson to battle for a title in Phoenix in just about 13 days. It was some good, solid racing at the very end of that race yesterday. I mean, once Larson left the race with that barrel incident coming down pit road way too high, it was pretty much open the door for everybody else to have a chance. Blaney, who was, I think, a little bit better than Larson at the final stage. Byron, who, even though with the points cushion, he had a chance to win. Bell, who took a 20th place car and got all the way up there and won the race. Hamlin had a chance. There was just so many interesting battles out there between these guys that are trying to get into the championship 4 at the end of the day yesterday. But it was some really good racing. It's a great track, Homestead. I mean, some people, including myself, think that it should remain the Final 4 race like it used to a couple years ago. I'm kind of getting adjusted to Phoenix as the championship 4 race, actually. I mean, doesn't mean we won't go back to Homestead as the championship decider down the road. We could go back down there, but I kind of like it as a playoff race to determine, okay, who's going to win to go to the championship 4. It's just a fun track in general, and I'd like to go to that venue one day. It seems like a great racetrack to just watch these guys rip up against the wall and have some thrilling battles on the track. Fun racetrack to go to. Next weekend, it comes down to it. The last race determine which drivers will be joining Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell in the championship 4 at Phoenix. It'll be a very tough battle at the paperclip at Martinsville. William Byron, 30 points above. I think he's going to be pretty good next weekend. Ryan Blaney is 10 points above the cutoff line. That's a good cushion, but you need to have a solid run next weekend to solidify your spot. As for the guys below the cutoff line, Tyler Reddick down by 10 points. He could point his way in at a track where he's been pretty good at. Mark Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin, as I mentioned, veterans of the sport, successful at Martinsville, but not so much in the past. It's going to take pretty much a must-win for both of those guys. Only one, though, however, can prevail and win next weekend. And it's absolutely must-win for Chris Buescher, who struggled big time yesterday. They didn't even finish in the top 20. They got 21st. Ouch. They're going to have to win next weekend if they're going to be able to compete in the Championship 4 at Phoenix. Who will be those two drivers joining Larson and Bell in the Championship 4? I think Byron is a pretty sure bet. Who will be that other driver? Will it be Blaney? Will it be Reddick? Will it be Hamlin? Will it be Truex? Or will it be Buescher? All I can say is, strap in, folks. Next weekend's going to be a really good show. And for the first time ever in my lifetime, I'm finally going to be able to go to Martinsville. I'm going to be at that race next Sunday. I cannot wait to finally go to the paperclip. I've never been before. This has been on my bucket list for a long, long time, and I cannot wait to go to Martinsville next week and find out who gets in the Championship 4. It's going to be a blast. And might I also add, the weather is looking really good. I mean, normally when you go to Martinsville this time of the year, it's going to be cold. You got to bring your jacket. I'm still going to bring my jacket, but the high is supposed to be 81 in October in Virginia at Martinsville. Yeah. This isn't early, I know it's on a Sunday, but it feels almost like a Freaky Friday moment right there. But looking forward to next weekend and see who gets into the Championship 4. And I hope you all enjoy it at the track or on the television. So subscribe, like. Congrats once again to Christopher Bell and the 20 team on their impressive win at Homestead yesterday and locking up their spot in the Championship 4. Have a great night, everybody. Let's go racing.